Hello, everyone. Glad you're with us here today. Please be here for our bi-weekly news update reports. Um, Unfortunately, you only have myself, Lee Faulk, and Vince Destel with you today. Dr. Edwards is in other parts, traveling and so on and so forth, and so it's just us. So we'll try to muddle through it. We've got a lot to talk about, a lot of current conditions that we need to discuss, a lot happening in the cattle markets. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Vince.
Thank you, Lee, and it's always a pleasure, folks. Well, this weather we're dealing with is not a pleasure, but uh, from central Louisiana and all through parts of South Louisiana, it's dry. We're expecting our highest temperatures, record temperatures Wednesday, Thursday, around 106, 107 actual temperature. Heat indices in the upper 100 teens, somewhere 18, 19, 120, which is the unthinkable when our high this time of the year is generally around 92 to 94 degrees. Uh, Although our humidity is a little bit off compared to what we normally would experience this time of the year, but the word is dry. We haven't had measurable rain in many parts for going on 60 days now. A lot of our crops have been harvested. Our corn and our 90% of our rice crop has been harvested. The unfortunate thing is our soybean crop is diminishing by the hour with these high temperatures and lack of rainfall. We got growers, grain crop growers, pasture folks, livestock folks that are putting water out on their pastures and crops as they can, which is an additional uh, expense burden, I guess, if you would, with the cost of fuel, cost of electricity, and always the threat of losing power. So people are struggling right now to really truly make the best of a bad situation. So the worst situation I think we're facing is what forages are left to be baled for hay or scarce, dried out, uh, hard to cut, and very little left to cut. We have a lot of rice straw in central and south Louisiana that's been baled up with the hopes of meeting some needs of hay needs as we move towards the winter feeding period. From looks like we'll go from summer to fall. Hopefully, when this weather changes, we'll get some reasonably good weather, and hopefully that comes with rain. So, with that being said, we're seeing a lot of cattle going to market here at some of our local barns in Opelousas and Kinder. There's advertisements of several herd sellouts up at Mansura, and also I know in the southeastern part of the state, there's a couple of markets over there that they've announced some herd sellouts. So it's the unthinkable. We got good prices, and that's the complaint from most producers. We finally got a fair price going, and we have the lack of forage or the just the lack of being able to sustain moving from our spring, summer, and into the fall with no rain in the forecast. Uh, and the unthinkable would be possibly that a tropical system of some sort, which there's one in the Gulf currently, and we're experiencing 15 to 20 mile an hour winds of the effects of that today. But we're under fire risk of all things in South Louisiana for August 21st. Uh, I know this is being recorded on Monday for Tuesday the 22nd, but we're under fire risk right now in the western parishes. There's several forest fires over the last week to 10 days that have broke out. I was in the western part of the parish last week harvesting a corn plot, and I saw Department of Ag and Forestry dozers running around the countryside plowing fire breaks, and you could noticeably see from the beaten path that there's some fires and some forests that have had burned up. The threat is real. It's a bad situation, something we've never experienced. Certainly not in my career of being in the ag business from the early 90s or late 80s through the 90s, and now through the 2030 years of experience. I've never seen anything like this. So, uh, ryegrass. We've seen a few people trying to scratch some ground and get ready for some ryegrass, because here we are, third week in August. Typically, in a month from now, we'd be sowing some ryegrass seed to get it going. I can't see that happening anytime soon. We'd need a huge chance of rain to even think about considering doing that. So, we got people are scared to cut hay because of threat of a spark. We had one situation in a cornfield here a couple of weeks ago. Straw chopper on the back of the machine threw a spark, a bearing went out, and the standing corn caught on fire. And luckily, they had fire response in about 6 to 10 minutes and got it put out by 2 fire departments. So he was cutting 200 bushel corn, whether you can imagine that or not, and the field caught on fire. So just strange things have happened or happening. The drought conditions are just unthinkable right now, and we just pray and hope for better weather moving forward. So, Lee, with that being said, the cattle markets, I'm sure you'll cover that some, are strong, and it's the unfortunate thing, as Lee and I were talking right before we started recording, I think they had slightly over 2,000 head at Kinder. It's something he saw on social media. So for today's sale in Kinder, so that's 2,500 head is a big run for them, typically in the fall. But I think that's it's getting premature, and some of these people are just going to get out of the business or reduce numbers enough that they can sustain. So just want to mention the Dean Lee Beef and Forage Field Day coming up September the 14th. That's going to take place at the Dean Lee Research Station there at the LSUA campus. There is a registration process, and you can get that link by going to our Pasture to Market newsletter that Dr. Ashley Edwards puts out. That link is available there, but registration will begin at 2 o'clock on September the 14th. So we'd hope that you would attend. Not that we're going to have any great news, because I don't think the conditions are going to be any better in another 3 weeks from now, but who knows? We might get a change and a break in the weather. So, Lee, that's about all I have at this time.
Thank you, Vince. We certainly appreciate your input. As we were talking before we started recording, wish we had better news to share, folks. It's hard. I'm guilty, as much everybody is, about being pessimistic, and I'm not a pessimistic person. I generally have a pretty optimistic out view as far as the future and everything. But it's hard to look over some of the challenges we're facing currently today. And with that, I'll jump right into my side of things, or what I'm seeing from North Louisiana standpoint. Dry doesn't begin to describe it, and dry is the word for the entire state. And I realize that there's been pockets that have received slight rainfall more recently than others. Some portions of extreme north central Louisiana have received a little bit more than other parts of the state and other parts of the region, but we've all been affected by the temperatures, and these high temperatures, as Vince alluded to, these temperatures of 105, 106. I believe 2 days ago, the Shreveport Weather Service, the National Weather Service out of Shreveport, got 1 degree from the record all-time high, which is 110 degrees. They reached 109 degrees. So that's been affecting everybody, and that's equalized things quite a bit. So what we're seeing is, even though certain areas may have gotten slightly more rainfall more recently, these temperatures have leveled the playing field, so to speak, and everyone is pretty well burning up at some stage of burning up, so to speak. I've talked about it several times on this news update, and I'll talk about it again today. These folks in Sabine Parish, portions of DeSoto, portions of Natchitoches Parish, if you want to see dry, you travel that part of the country. It's some of the worst drought I've ever seen. I hadn't been in the business as long as Vince, but I've been around quite a few years in the cattle business in this part of the country. 2011 is a rival year, but that's depending on your location. For many of our neighbors, and especially those in those parishes I mentioned, this year would take the cake. This year would overshadow 2011 as far as the drought implications. Vince mentioned the wildfires, and northwest Louisiana has been affected as well, particularly that Sabine Parish area. The portions of the country around Florine have had fire wildfires break out and burn sizable amount of acreages for the last several days and last week or so. And as we speak today, as Vince mentioned, we're recording this on Monday for publication on Tuesday. We're under a red flag warning due to low humidity, relatively breezy winds up this way. Vince and the folks in South Louisiana probably getting a little bit breezier conditions than what we are, but it is plenty breezy up here, and I know that there's been a couple of fires break out already in Sabine Parish, but the whole region is at risk for this, folks. So I'm going to echo what he said in his portion. Just be careful on this stuff, folks. Be careful on what you're doing right now. In Louisiana, we're not very good at dealing with fire risks. Something we don't traditionally deal with, but it's a very real and present danger right now, folks. We all have been there. If you baled your own hay, and you probably caught a baler on fire at least. I've seen fires in hay fields from hay cutters striking some random rock or a chunk of concrete that may be laying in the middle of the field from who knows where, or as Vince was talking about, bearings going out. This stuff does catch fire. And the thing about it is, under normal conditions, yeah, you may have a fire and hopefully you're carrying a fire extinguisher and they're able to put it out very quickly and no harm, no foul. But in conditions like this, and with the material as dry as what it is, and the surrounding woods and forests, if you do have them around you, as dry and just tinderbox materials, what it is, the fuel just adds up, and it can really be devastating right now. So please be careful. I talked to a producer, in fact, this morning, who was holding off cutting some hay because of this fact, and I thought that was a wise decision. And I personally have some hay that needs to be cut that I'm holding off of for the same reason. Moving on past the obvious, which is the weather, talk about hay supplies just a little bit. Depending on where you are in North Louisiana, a lot of producers are feeding hay right now, and that just adds insult to injury because the hay supplies are so critically low in this part of the country. A lot of folks will tell you that, we were just about to have enough hay if we can avoid feeding hay. And a lot of folks have not been able to. A lot of folks have had to dip into that supply just to be able to weather this storm. Get asked a lot about where to buy hay. And, one of the unique things about this year is most years when we run into drought in Northwest Louisiana, that drought in our part of the country is not something that we're unaccustomed to. We see it fairly regular, but most years, whenever we run into a drought, I can kind of point folks in a direction to head to get hay. You may have to travel a little ways. A lot of times, South Louisiana is a good option, or other places. This year, it's a little more difficult, folks, because of South Louisiana being as drier than what we are. I've been sending some folks up into South Arkansas, where they've had a little more rainfall, and there's a fairly moderately better supply of hay. I've been kind of recommending some folks possibly look at Central Texas, though Central Texas and North Texas has experienced drought the last couple of years. So a lot of those folks over there are trying to build up their hay stores. There may or may not be a sufficient level there for them to get into selling some. Possibly the Mississippi area. There may be some hay over there. I haven't had any reports on that, so to speak. If you need help finding some hay, I can't promise that we can help you find it, but give one of us a call. Reach out to your local extension agent. We'll do what we can to try to help you locate some hay for your cattle. Going into the markets a little bit, what Vince stated about Kinder, the same thing goes for these livestock auctions, especially in Northwest Louisiana. typically, as we were talking before we started recording, these barns, a lot of times when the weather gets above 100 degrees, people just hold off pinning cattle to sell calves or to market cold cows or whatnot, and the runs tend to be a little bit lower during the times whenever the temperatures are at an extreme. That's not the case right now. Northwest Louisiana sale barns, particularly Red River Livestock and Coshada, has been seeing some huge runs. A lot of cows, folks. There are a lot of cows being marketed right now. I did not think that there was as many cull cows left in the country as what we're seeing, but just for reference, I think last week at Coshada they ran 400 to 500 head of cows by themselves, and that's pretty telling and pretty substantial. It breaks your heart because, like Vince said, that these folks have weathered the storm, so to speak, been through these horrible market conditions. We finally get into a period where we can maybe come close to turning a dollar or two, only to be met with inadequate feed and forage for our cattle, and it just breaks your heart. Anyway, jumping straight into the markets, I'll give you our Louisiana market update. As a reminder, these are self-reported numbers. I do my best to gather the information correctly, but they are self-reported. They don't quantify the quality of cattle now. So quality of cattle can definitely have a big bearing on the markets. On the 5 to 6 weight steers, 500 to 600 pounds, averages was from $1.33 per pound to $2.44 per pound. 5 to 6 weight heifers, $1.33 to $2.26. Cull cows, 68 cents to $1.34. Cull bulls, 78 cents to $1.28 per pound. Bred cows, I only report the highs on bred cows. I made a full explanation in the last market report, I think, on this. But the average of the high for bred cows was $1,587.50. Pairs sold in a range from $700 to $1,918. And as I stated last time I gave one of these updates, I've started something a little new to track exactly how the market moves within Louisiana. So I do a comparison, and I'm going to give you a percentage increase or decrease in the market from this time 2 weeks ago. Remember, we record these reports bi-weekly, so this is not week to week. This is every 2 weeks. So on the 5 to 6 weight steers, they were 7.6% below where they were 2 weeks ago. 5 to 6 weight heifers, 7.7% lower than 2 weeks ago. Cull cows were up about 8%. I think that may be misleading because of the maybe some differences in quality and weight on the cull cows, but it did show an 8% increase. But cull bulls showed an 8.8% decrease from the time 2 weeks ago. As far as the futures markets have been responding fairly positively today to data in the cattle on feed report that was released last week, which I'll touch on here in just a minute. They've also touched fairly positively on beef demand, rises in box beef prices as well. Live cattle for August delivery, at the time of recording today on Monday, was trading at 178.97. Feeder cattle for August delivery was trading at 246.77. As I mentioned, the cattle on feed report, cattle on feed placed in August was 98% of this time last year. Those placed in July was 92% of last year, and those marketed in July was 94.6% of last year. So we know we don't need the cattle on feed report to tell us what we already know. The fact that there are less cattle in the country, we're seeing more of these calves marketed right now than what would traditionally be marketed this time of year. And a lot of these cattle are getting pulled early. They're lighter weights. There is some opportunity in the cattle market if you do have some hay or by some blessing some grass. I do think that there is some opportunity still on your bred cows. I think there's some opportunity still on pair cattle, and maybe on some lightweight calves as well. I'm going to close up with the events that Ashley asked us to advertise. Vince mentioned the Dean Lee Field Day on September the 14th. September the 21st will be the Northeast Region Beef and Forage Field Day. That's going to be a morning event, and it's going to be located at the Gold Mine Plantation. October the 3rd and October the 5th will be the Cattle Pregnancy Determination Clinic at the Hill Farm Research Station. For more information on that, you can contact us here at the Hill Farm Research Station. October the 18th through the 20th, putting on a AI class at the Dean Lee Station. October the 21st will be the Acadiana Fall Beef and Forage Field Day held at the Iberia Research Station. The Southeast region has announced a Master Cattleman class. It's going to run from September the 11th through November the 13th. It's going to be on Monday evenings. For more information on that, contact Dr. Gary Hay. And so we'll link the Pasture to Market newsletter to this news update, and it'll have all the information and contact information on all these events that I mentioned. So, folks, that's about all I have. Vince, do you have anything else you need to add?
Yeah, Lee, I sure would like to mention that if you're have cattle and you're dealing with this heat like everyone is across the state, you might want to pay close attention to some pneumonia cases. I've heard of several cases being reported, even in some grown cattle, and likewise, more so in suckling cattle that are suffering from the heat. So make sure that you keep a close eye on those suspects that may be chronic in nature, and give them some type of antibiotic to get that cleared up, or consult with your veterinarian for protocol on that. So I just wanted to make mention of that.
Thank you, Vince. And while we're on the subject, just be aware that anaplasmosis season is right around the corner as well. If you've historically had a problem with anaplas in your cattle herd, if you know that it's endemic to your herd, reach out to your local veterinarian and talk about some treatment options. It's right around the corner, just like ryegrass. It doesn't seem like it should be ryegrass season already, but here we are. So with that being said, unless Vince has anything else, I'm going to conclude it by this report by saying, please pray for rain for the state of Louisiana. We definitely could use some moisture, and I hope by the next time we talk, some rain will have been realized by you, or it'll be in the imminent forecast. Thank you, and have a good day.